Today we're going to talk about the French farm where the Petradine plantation currently exists and how it all came about. Go for it, George.
Well, when we first came to Homer, we didn't have a car, but we used to, whatever transportation we had, we'd drive on 60 and always looked at the spot where the farm is located now. It was 30 acres that was for sale. Well, it wasn't advertised, but it was just land that was owned by the French family who were originally from Homer, but they lived in Kalamazoo. And when we saw this land as we used to go into Homer from Toledo or wherever it came from, we always were attracted to the crest of the hill, the trees, and the land was there, and many people wanted to buy it, but the French family that owned the property didn't have any love for the people of Homer, so they never would sell the property to anyone from Homer. Although, so here's this land that was beautiful, and so we found out that the banker's wife was related to the French family. So we arranged through the banker to meet the French family with the banker's wife in Marshall. And we discussed the land and the availability of the land. And the French people, they had the land, and they, just as they stated, they just didn't have any love for the Homerites. So we could talk, and we negotiated with them through the help of the banker's wife, and agreed on a price of $3,000 for the land, 30 acres, $1,100 an acre. And everybody in Homer thought that was a crazy price, it was too high, but it was something that we wanted and we bought. And then we had the bare land, and I've always dreamt of having a tri-level home built in the side of a hill, and that's what we were able to do. When we saw the land, we bought the land, and at first we had it surveyed, and at the crest of the hill of our property, we decided to build our basement. And the basement, the roof of the basement was the height of the farmland. So we're below the average, the property, the farmland's height. And then now that we had the land, trying to find a contractor, and I found one that was doing some work for the foundry, and he agreed to build a basement into the hill, which was a basement part of our dedicated tri-level home plan. So we built the basement, and getting lumber and materials to finish the basement off was very difficult because there was scarcity of materials that we managed to find from various lumber yards throughout the local areas to get enough lumber to finish off the basement after the basement was built. And we did that ourselves, both Betty and I. We had a look, when we the layout of the basement was a living room, kitchen, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms on the west end of the layout. And we were able to get those rooms finished off, and we were able to find a window manufacturer in Battle Creek that would build the windows for us, which they did. So we had the shell, and we partitioned it off ourselves, and we, in our living room, the front end of our fireplace and so forth, Betty and I laid all of asphalt tile that was available. In the kitchen, we tiled it, and we tiled it. The rest of the house we retiled. She and I did the retiling. And from there after we were in with the floors laid and the rooms laid out, we were able to build as we were living in the quarters, as the building material was available to finish off our dream plan. And we managed to, with Betty doing the scouting for the various lumber yards to get the materials so we were able to finish the basement. And when we finished the basement, we had a living room, a kitchen, be a small, medium-sized kitchen, a medium-sized kitchen, small, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. And in the basement we had the fireplace. So we were able to heat the living room in that part of the house with firewood that we had. We kept the fire going during the winter. Then we got a space heater, an oil space heater, which was available. And we were able to maintain sufficient heat to just create a little warm living quarters in there, the bedrooms and kitchen that were just off the living room. And we lived that way for I don't know how many years. And meanwhile, in the summer, we would do all the work around the outside, because for the basement, we were able to go into create a sunroom on the north side of the building. And we were able to do most of that work ourselves, with the blocks laid, and created a large patio facing the north off the basement. And you could enter the basement from the floor level down on the lower level. And then when that was done, and after many years, we were able to build the upstairs with a side entrance to get in. From the ground level, you could go down to the basement, and from the ground level you could go up to our rooms above the basement, which was, the ground level was level with the existing land. And I know it sounds kind of peculiar, but maybe an add-on where you could enter the structure and go down to the basement, or you could go up into the bedrooms. The bedrooms consisted of one large master bedroom and a little living room, very small, bathroom, and 2 bedrooms. One bedroom was for the boys. We built bunk beds for two of the boys and a single bed for one of the boys in that same room. And Carol had her room to herself, and a new structure. And we had a new bathroom and a new structure and a small, well, it's a den-like, where we had a television and so forth. And we were able to finish, we lived that way. And we kept adding as we could afford it, and kept building until we had the basement and the bedrooms upstairs and a little vestibule to enter the basement from the outside, or the bedrooms from the vestibule. And then we finally got an architect from Coldwater, and he gave us the plans for our present living room. And that was one part of the structure that we had nothing to do. We had a contractor build a living room and a big-sized living room that just blended into our original structure, which the old structure had. The old structure wasn't what we actually wanted, because we wanted sloping roofs, but there was nobody that could do it at that time, because you're always limited to supplies and people, contractors, to do any building for anybody. But we managed to survive and did basically the plan that we wanted to have. We had the basement part, with the bedrooms were upstairs, and the living room which was a level, so you could, from our living room, you could go down the lower basement and or up into the bedrooms. Then when the final architect that we had, built our living room, which blended everything together and did what we really wanted to have done, but because of the past experiences that we had with LAC, we didn't have the roof, the sloping roof that we wanted. We had to use what we were able to get. But the final structure, the living room, was one that was what we really all wanted, is made it a tri-level house. From the living room, you could go into the basement and go into your bedrooms.
And then tell about the fireplace and the split.
Well, when we were talking about adding on the building, we always wanted a fieldstone fireplace. And at that time, there was only 2 contractors in Michigan that had that type of split fieldstone buildings. But it so happened, while we were having some work done on the foundry, I was talking to one of the bricklayers, but you know what we liked to in the house that we were going to like to build, but we couldn't find anybody that did split stone fireplace, split stone structures. And this partner, or this builder that was doing work for the foundry, which was block laying and bricks and so forth, he said he just loves working with split stones and so forth. And we were fortunate because at that time, like I said, there's only a couple contractors in the state of Michigan that did split fieldstone construction.
And what was this person's name?
Bill Barnes, who lived in Albion, but he's a Homer, right? He grew up in Homer. And he was working with a contractor from Albion as a block layer when he's doing work at the foundry. And we got to talking with Bill, and he said I told him what we liked in the structure, sandstone walls, and so he does that. So when I found out he did what we wanted with split fieldstone, and it just worked out beautifully, and he did the work, and he was a creative person, and then he did some split fieldstone work in our living room, and this augmented our structure and made it more livable and adorable, really.
And where did the stones come from?
Well, it's ironic, with all the stones that we have in our Flintstone structures, we only used 2 or 3 that we got off our land. But this Bill Barnes, who lived in Albion for the Homer, and he loved stonework, and as he would drive, he noticed fieldstones in different walls and on his way to Albion or any place, and he always made a note of different structures and stones. So when we told him what kind of wall we wanted, and he managed to find all the stones that he used in constructing our fireplace and what would you call that, Bill?
That's an entry wall.
Entry wall for split fieldstone. And in fact, he suggested putting a entry wall inside because he just loved working with stone. And the ironic of it, when you do that split stone walls for building, you can only lay 1 course at a time because you couldn't put too many on because it would ruin your mortar joints. So it took a little long time to build. But he built that split entryway entrance and the fieldstone. Then we had, on the outside was brick, so we had a bricklayer do all the brick. And everything was done piecemeal and trying to find contractors at a time. And we always managed, fortunately, to find somebody that did the job that we wanted to have done.
When do you think the house was completely finished? About what year?
Oh man, I couldn't tell you.
In the 50s?
Yeah, from a long time, it really is.
Well, all 4 kids were already here, and they were in the original structure, so the other things were added on after that.
The living room was after that. But the basement part was done well back when Georgie was just a year old. Because he was just a baby when he was born in 47, I think.
Right, and then Carol, the others were born, and then Carol was born in about 54.
About that, right?
Okay.
Well, then, of course, when we built the, I'll tell you.
Well, let's move on. Let's take a look at the outbuildings, the barns. How did they come about?
Well, actually, after we got our main structure outlined and built the way we wanted, and we had the tri-level with the living room and the bedrooms, and then when we were building it, we needed a barn, so I built the barn, I don't know, a year, where we could store a lot of stuff in our car, the garage for our car. Then when I built the garage, then we built stables for the horses. And at that time, we wanted a big barn structure, and we tied that into the stables and our outdoor garage.
And who did the work on all of that?
On the garage and the stables, I did all that work. And a big barn, we had a contractor to do that. But I was, when I was building that barn, I'd come up from work, get my hammer and pound and built the barn. And then it was a two-story barn. And I wanted a hip roof, but they didn't have any hip roof plans, so we got the plans that existed, which was just ordinary structure. I wanted a little more unique, but I couldn't get plans for it. But anyway, I built the barn and the bed and the second floor in the barns. And when I'd be laying the ridge boards in the barns, my neighbor, an elderly neighbor, who's around 70 years old, always wanted to help. And the elderly, he was just a nice elder gentleman, and I was always afraid that he'd fall or he'd get hurt. So I'd be working on the structure, and I'd see him coming with his hammer, and I'd get down and say I was all through.
What was his name? Do you remember?
He's just across the, he was I forget their names now, but.
It's okay.
And then when I built his mailbox for him, and they were always trying to help, and I did stuff for them.
And they were elderly. They were in their 70s.
They were very elderly.
Right. All right, and then at some point you decided to add the swimming pool.
Well, after we got the barn, the stables, had that all done, and then we had the big barn with, it's a contractor built the barn, the big barn. And then we decided to put a pool in, and we hired a local pool builder and put our pool in. And when we put the pool in, we made an outdoor structure for a changing room and a pump room and so forth as an add-on structure, and with a sauna, bath in the center, and the others, and a pool and a pump room and a catch-all room where we had all the supplies that were needed around the outside pool, and that structure, I did all of that.
Did you have a lot of parties at the pool and in the sunroom?
Yeah, at that time we had that active group of our senior citizens. So we had parties there, and we could have the pool, and we had horseshoes and all that room. And then, of course, we did a lot of party places. McCullough's had a large facility area, a big pool, and a big area with a yard. and Allen's had a pool, so we had local friends who had similar pools and so forth. So we would do a lot of trading, not trading, but picnics at one structure and the McCulloughs at another. And at the Andrews, they didn't have a pool, but they had a nice outdoor facilities. And no, but then Al Allen's had a pool. So we had, our friendship group had good facilities where we could picnic at various places all summer and had a great time. We shot horseshoes and we played darts and all different games. And like I say, each one of them they all had pools too, so I think they're pretty common for our group to have their own pools and so forth. So we had parties every summer at different houses.
And then recently, in the last 10 or 15 years, when the pool was filled in, you did away with it. Do you have any plans for another pool?
Well, it all depends on them. And I've talked to other people. When we had our pool and the kids were all grown up and the pool wasn't used very much. And every other family experienced the same thing when their children were going. And they filled their pools up, and which we did because there's nobody here to use the pool rather. And then I think that if any grandchildren come back, I think it's accessible. We can finish off a pool very easily.
Go back to another pool.
Right.
Any other thoughts on your property here?
Well, the property, like I said, when I first saw it, I just fell in love with it. And everybody else in Homer fell in love with it before my time. But the owners wouldn't sell it to anybody from Homer. So
Okay.
we were very fortunate that through friends making connections, we were able to realize the dream and be able to buy it and fill it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, George.